Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm here to give you the latest updates on the urgent fire situation evolving across the state. I'm joined on the phone by Oregon Department of Forestry Fire Chief Doug Graff, Oregon Chief Deputy State Fire Marshal Mariana Ruiz Temple, Major General Michael Stencil, and the Oregon Office of Emergency Management Director Andrew Phelps. I'm joined in person with Gabriella Goldfarb of the Oregon Health Authority. Let me start by bracing all of you for some very difficult news. We are currently facing a statewide fire emergency. Over the last 24 hours, Oregon has experienced unprecedented fire with significant damage and devastating consequences across the entire state. I want to be upfront in saying that we expect to see a great deal of loss, both in structures and in human lives. This could be the greatest loss of human lives and property due to wildfire in our state's history. Early reports indicate that the towns of Detroit and Central Oregon, Blue River and Vida in Lane County, and Phoenix and Talent in Southern Oregon are substantially destroyed. Hundreds of homes have been lost, and we continue to carry out mass evacuations across the entire state. Fortunately, numerous Oregonians have been rescued from harm's way, including even pulling people from safety in the rivers. But many more Oregonians will need to evacuate their homes in the coming hours to ensure their safety. We currently have 5 incident management teams out in the field fighting 35 wildfires. Multiple smaller fires continue to erupt across the state, adding to this crisis. And unfortunately, we are not getting any relief from the weather conditions. Winds continue to feed these fires and push them into our towns and cities. Right now, more than 300,000 acres are burning across the state, which is the equivalent of over 500 square miles. In some parts of the state that are not yet burning, the worst fire conditions in 3 decades persist: dry air, dry brush, and hot winds. This means everyone must be on high alert. This is the first time I have invoked a Fire Conflagration Act for the entire state. This act gives the state fire marshal the power to direct and deploy state resources anywhere where they are needed. This morning, I also directed the Office of Emergency Management to request a federal emergency declaration. That assistance request will free up federal resources to support our response efforts, including power generation's capabilities, search and rescue, mortuary assistance, and more. Our number 1 priority right now is saving lives. As such, our statewide strategy is focused on life safety, evacuation, and protecting structures where possible. Our heroic firefighters, National Guard, and Red Cross volunteers are working around the clock to evacuate Oregonians from the path of these fires and provide food and shelter for our evacuees. Many of these volunteers and firefighters are from affected areas themselves and needed to evacuate their families on top of providing help to others. This is truly an all-hands-on-deck moment for Oregon. The next several days are going to be extremely difficult. If you hear only one thing today, hear this. Please pay attention to the directions from firefighters, local officials, and emergency responders. If you are asked to evacuate, do so immediately. Your choices to evacuate, to help others to safety will save lives, including possibly your own. We as Oregonians always rise in these moments of crisis, and we are certainly in the midst of one right now. And I know that by working together, we will come through this. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Graff. Doug?
Good afternoon. Doug Graff here. How am I coming in?
You sound great.
Okay, excellent. Name is Doug Graff. I serve as Chief of Fire Protection for the Department of Forestry. My peer and partner in fire protection for the state, Mariana Ruiz-Temple, is going to join me in this briefing. And I'd ask her to kick this off because the focus today, and has been for the last 48 hours, is life safety. And Mariana works closely with all local fire service to make sure that happens across all these fires relative to evacuations and structure protection. And then I'll close with the statewide perspective on new initial attack fires that we're working, and then what we can see relative to weather moving forward. So Mariana, could you please kick it off? Okay, we'll reboot. Okay, I'll give a statewide perspective on all the fires on the landscape. And once again, Governor Brown, thank you for the time to share these critical messages. And thanks again for the professionalism in the media, which is absolutely necessary to get these important messages to all Oregonians. We are absolutely in unprecedented times. This event has evolved over the last 72 hours, driven by a cold front on top of an east wind event. The cold front brings critically impressive high winds, and then the east wind event sustains those winds for the past 72 hours. And those conditions on top of critically dry fuels, over 3 decades of studying fuel conditions across Oregon, particularly in Southwest Oregon. We are breaking records for fire indices, which is an indication of fire potential and growth on the landscape. Those 3 events combined have brought a historical fire event into Oregon across the state. And this is new territory for us. I'll begin in Eastern Oregon. We have had success east of the Cascades relatively to what we're experiencing on the west side. New fires continue to emerge because of the winds and dry conditions, and we're having some success. We only have 1 incident management team deployed, large incident management team to manage the fires just north of Klamath Falls out of Chiloquin, Fire 242, and conditions have gone well there, relatively speaking to the west side. We have about 11,000 acres burning there. State Fire Marshal team with ODF joined there for structure protection and wildlife land fire protection. Lots of homes threatened and evacuated on all these fires that I'll describe today. As I move to the west side of the state, I'll pay particular attention to the west slope of the Cascades. This is where those winds are traveling down canyons and driving all fires that exist in these canyons down to the valley bottom. In some cases, 55 miles stretch fire from the crest of the Cascade to the valley bottom. I'll start in our most northern drainage, which is the fanniam drainage, Highway 22. We have the Lion's Head fire and the Beachy and fanniam fires all combined in the last 24 hours. We have about 55 miles of fire from the crest of the Cascade down towards Staten. This has been a dramatic and unprecedented event in this canyon. A loss of homes, and we're now getting back into that region, cutting roads, opening to see what we have left in that valley relative to structures, and assess the situation on how we can take fire action in that valley. Just north of that valley, emerging and growing fire pushing up against the east side of Clackamas County is also a problem. I think all these three fires will combine into one. By the end of the next 48 hours, we will have 3 incident management teams to manage this wide, expansive fire, one on the east side of the Cascades, one on the west side, down Canyon, and one north to protect the Clackamas County side. Moving south from that drainage, we're entering into the McKenzie Highway. This fire is in the range of 100,000 acres burning on Highway 126. This is the Holiday Farm fire. Once again, same conditions, winds driving down from the crest of the Cascade down these valleys. That whole valley is evacuated, the whole road system. Continue to work that fire. We have, again, ODF team and OSFM team structural protection on that fire. Moving further south to the drainage into Roseburg and Sutherland on the Umpqua Highway 138, another 100,000 acres burning. In the Star Mountain and Archie's fires, once again, same conditions, pushing down those valleys, and that has been the defining experience since the beginning of this firefight, is that west slope of the Cascades. As we move to the west, in the last 24 hours, we've been picking up significant fire activity along the Coast Range and in Southwest Oregon, Medford, and Ashland areas. I understand Mariana is on, so I'll let her fill in some blanks relative to homes threatened and evacuation conditions. But I'll close with fires in Ashland and Medford, include the Alameda fire and the Obichain fire. These are combining for well over 15,000 acres. Continue to threaten and spread significant evacuations there. On the Coast Range, we're seeing the same condition on the west slope of the Coast Range. Winds pushing fires down into Lincoln City, which is causing evacuations, Bay City, to Tillamook County evacuations, and then fires stretching from the Coast Range all the way back to the west side, west of Hillsborough. So when we say a statewide event, absolutely no area in the state is free from fire. Mariana, if you're on, get add any specifics relative to those fires on evacuations, that would be great.
Thank you, Doug.
All right. Thank you, Doug. And so this is Mariana Reese-Temple. I serve as the Chief Deputy State Fire Marshal. I would like to add our latest conflagration that was invoked is the Slater fire burning near the Illinois Valley in Southern Oregon. We expect to have significant evacuations in that area based on the fire coming in from the state of California. And that fire is currently on the ridges near the Oregon Caves and continues to spread. A little bit about the fanniam fire. All areas of that fire, as Doug indicated, have been in level 3, continuing to work with our local law enforcement as that fire progresses to the north. Areas of concern across all of the fires that Doug indicated is the amount of structures that we will see lost, and in addition to human loss that we expect to see over the next few days. These fires are unprecedented, and we continue to work with your emergency managers and the state emergency Office of Emergency Management as we begin to coordinate the type of events that need to be put in place for this type of event at the state level. In addition to the fires that we just briefed on, the Office of State Fire Marshal continues to work at the local level. And as the governor indicated, all residents, all public need to be prepared to understand levels 1, 2, and 3. And at this time in Western Oregon, in fact, anywhere in the state, all individuals should be really prepared at a moment's notice. I ask that everybody understand the levels 1, 2, and 3. They understand what they would take with them, be ready to go, and please stay attuned to all emergency management messages. End of report.
Thank you, Mariana. Doug Graff here, and I'll close with what we can expect weather-wise in the short term. So today marks the last day that we're experiencing this historic weather event. Winds have subsided to a degree, particularly with the valley-filled smoke, less than 5 miles an hour. However, on ridge tops, high mountain passes, we still are seeing gusts in the 25-mile-an-hour range, and then in southwest Oregon, gusts in the 25-mile-an-hour range. So still problematic, but the system that put us in this place today is breaking down, and that's the good news I can give you today. Tomorrow begins a hopeful change in weather conditions and gives us a chance to shift from life safety, point protection, to being aggressive where we can on reestablishing containment lines that were blown through by the wind and fire events in the last 72 hours. Thursday, the system breaks down, we're thinking midday, where we start to shift from a westerly flow, which is typically more cooler temperatures and brings moist air into the region, which is contrary to what we've been experiencing over the last 72 hours with these dry winds. So that's favorable. We're expecting that condition to be maintained really through the weekend with that marine air influence. And with that, I would close.
Thank you, Doug. Is General Mike Stencil available? We would appreciate an update from the National Guard perspective, please.
All right, thank you, Governor. Yes, I'm on the line. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, as you know, it's been a dynamic 36 hours for the National Guard. With the fires that were brewing last night in Ashland and Medford, we stood up teams down there to assist with a short notice medical evacuation for a couple of the hospitals down there in the event that was needed. They were put on notice that they may need to evacuate the area within 3 hours, and so we were up late in the morning till about 1:30, making sure those crews were available for any ambulatory assistance that was needed. We continue to have 7 aircraft available to support the fires, 2 again still dedicated to medical evacuation capability, the rest for firefighting. I will say though, in the last 24 hours, they've done minimal flying due to the low ceiling and visibility throughout western Oregon. Since yesterday as well, I've had a formal request from Oregon State Police for traffic control point assistance. So we put out a request for a little over 100 guardsmen to man a couple dozen traffic assistance points across the state to help protect people's property, those that have had to evacuate. There's also been a request from OST for fatality search and rescue teams in the event they're needed, so we're in the process of standing up to that unit. And the 3 125-person firefighting teams that I mentioned yesterday that we had available, they have now been formally requested by Oregon Department of Forestry, and we're in the process of standing them up and deploying them now in the near future. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, General Stencil. Andrew Phelps, the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, would you please give an update?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor. Audio okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to begin just by extending my gratitude to the entire state emergency response force that's been out responding to and protecting Oregonians from these wildfires, our firefighters, our law enforcement, our emergency managers, and especially our 911 dispatchers who've done incredible work notifying folks of evacuations, prioritizing calls for service, and helping Oregonians get to safety. The 911 folks really deserve a tip of the cap for the response that they've done throughout this wildfire event. The State Emergency Coordination Center remains active in connecting counties, tribes, state agencies with our federal partners. As the governor mentioned, the state has made a request for a federal emergency declaration to provide additional federal resources to the state of Oregon to help with the response to these fires. This will include search and rescue. It'll include mass care, sheltering, and feeding support, as well as an incident management assistance team to be located here at the State Emergency Coordination Center. We want to acknowledge all of the volunteers and firefighters and everyone who's actively responding, and the fact that many of the folks that are supporting response efforts, including shelter employees and staff and volunteers, those folks are also being impacted by this fire. We've had a number of responders report that their families have had to evacuate while they're off responding. So we need to be cognizant of the stress that our emergency management system across the state is under due to the impacts of these fires. Oregonians are asking how they can help if they haven't already been impacted by this fire. We know Oregonians want to lean in and help other Oregonians. At this point in time, the best thing that folks can do are to support the communities that have been impacted through financial donations to relief organizations that are actively responding and will be responding to these disasters. We recommend Oregonians visit the Oregon Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster website, or ORVOAD, and that's orvoad.org. We'll provide additional information from OEM and release later today. These organizations include the Red Cross, Team Rubicon, Salvation Army, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, and other organizations. We also recommend folks consider donating to response-specific organizations like the Wildland Firefighters Fund. Other ways that Oregonians can help, we've said this way too many times this year. If you're in a safe place, stay home. Reduce the impact of being out on the roads and taking up resources that our folks that are evacuating need to evacuate safely. If you're in an evacuation zone, make sure you're ready to evacuate. Know where you're going to go and what you need to bring with you. Above all else, our priority remains life safety. Please heed warnings of emergency personnel. If you're under evacuation orders, follow those orders. Go where you've been directed to go to evacuation points, and make sure you're prepared to leave as soon as possible. Once that level 3 go evacuation order comes in, there's no time left. You need to get out and get to safety. We also encourage Oregonians to take advantage of the Red Cross's Safe and Well application or website. This is a way that you can work to notify family and friends that you've evacuated and you're safe. You have control on that website of and how you evacuated, but we want to encourage folks that have evacuated to register with that system. That's going to help us too, identifying folks who may be unaccounted for during these wildfires. If you haven't already registered for online county emergency alerts and notifications, please do so. And once you've evacuated, do not return to the evacuation area until authorities have permitted re-entry. That's really important. And I'll close with a go back to our 911 system. Please save 911 for emergencies only. Don't call 911 for utility outages or updates. Call 911 to report a fire, if you need assistance during an evacuation, or for other life safety needs. Don't call 911 just to report smoke. There's smoke everywhere, and our 911 system is being inundated with smoke calls. That's all I've got at this time, and I'll turn it back over to you, Governor.
Thank you, Director Phelps. I think that leaves us an opportunity for questions.
As a reminder to all the speakers on the conference, please help identify or say your name and identify yourself for ASL and communication. And with that, we'll begin with Pat Goldman.
Yes, thank you. My question, Governor, or whoever can answer it, how many people are missing and how many are feared deceased?
Mariana, are you available to answer that question?
I am, Governor, thank you. Yeah, at this time, we are actively working on getting those numbers. We are actively still evacuating individuals on the fanniam complex fire. We've had significant saves in the last 24 hours where we're bringing folks out of the fire. So at this time, we have not been able to get into a lot of those areas. We do know that we will expect to see those, and we're coordinating with the state ECC on how we're going to be able to track that and communicate it. But right now, we are in active firefight on many of these fires, and quite frankly, not able to even get into some of these areas. I would expect to see numbers in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Mariana.
Okay, thank you.
Pat, this is Governor Brown. I just want to be upfront with Oregonians and reiterate that we expect to see a great deal of loss as a result of these fires, both in terms of structures and in terms of human lives. It, as I mentioned earlier, could be the greatest loss in human lives and property due to wildfire in our state's history. My heart goes out to all of the families impacted by this devastating event.
Okay, thank you, Governor.
Next question is Sarah with AP. Sarah, are you there?
Nikki will wait to see if Sarah joins us, and if not, I am just being notified that parts of Lincoln County are now under evacuation orders. People should check with their local authorities and evacuate immediately if they are in the evacuation zone. You can check on your county's emergency management website to find out information in terms of your area.
With that, we'll go to Erie.
Yes, hi. I wanted to ask about the absence of the CH-47 Chinook helicopters that would normally be available for the National Guard to use that are in Afghanistan. How are you backfilling those spots, and is it a problem having them overseas?
Major Stencil, would you like to pick up that question, please?
Hi, Gary. Mike Senthal. Those aircraft are currently deployed, it sounds like over to the Middle East and Europe in a combat role. Right now, up until this point in our response, they haven't been needed. I defer to Doug Graff on that call. But all of our aircraft at this time are able to meet the needs. In the event that we need additional capacity, we're prepared to reach out across to other states under emergency mutual assistance agreements to bring in additional assets to this area.
Thank you,
Thank
General.
you, General. Doug.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Doug.
Doug Graff here, Chief of Fire Protection, Mountain and Forestry. Since the governor invoked the declaration of fire emergency close to 3 weeks ago, we've accessed, as needed, National Guard assets, including helicopters, and we've utilized the Blackhawks. These are the Type 1 helicopters, equivalent to a Chinook, which is a Type 1 helicopter. This is probably the most we have flown historically National Guard helicopters. I think we're well over 150 hours on those aircraft. They've been flying for 3 weeks. Today we have 4 available, which is about the max I've ever seen available in-house within Oregon, and as the General stated, they can access more. The challenge currently in the last 72 hours relative to flying, and the General alluded to this, was the high winds really puts aircraft on the ground, so inability to fly under these conditions. And now we'll be facing with the smoke conditions. We also can't see the fires under these inversions as the smoke settles in. So we've had access as needed to aircraft, in large part also because the federal government invested in 36 additional helicopters at the beginning of this fire season, and that's been a tremendous asset for us to date. So a strong position relative to aircraft availability, and unfortunately conditions that have limited their use recently.
What was that number, helicopter, federal aircraft?
The U.S. Forest, Doug Graff here, the U.S. Forest Service added 36 additional helicopters to the national fleet this year, and that's been unprecedented from previous years. The key driver for that motivation was the conditions of COVID nationally, and really focusing greater attention on minimizing widespread of large fires across the nation. And of course, that's been successful up to this unprecedented weather event.
Thanks, Gary. And next we have Clear Withica. Sarah, you there?
Yes, hi. Governor Brown, my understanding is that the Fanniam Canyon fires were caused by falling trees that knocked down power lines. I wondered if you can explain why electric power wasn't preemptively shut off in Fanniam Canyon.
For most of these fires, the situation is still under investigation. It will probably take several days, several weeks. Mariana, can you talk a little bit more about the details, please?
Yeah, so the Beachy Creek fire earlier on was about 500 acres, and with the significant amount of winds, we did see down to transmission lines, power lines, that started multiple fires. But in terms of understanding all of the components about it, of that, we are doing active investigations. We do see the fire did grow to 159,000 acres. It is now merged with the Lion's Head fire, and we are calling that fire the Fanniam fire. But we expect to see more work on those investigations. The teams did, throughout the night, work with power companies and did implement power shutoffs throughout the evening.
And was that last evening or another evening?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It was during the initial evening when we were seeing the fire spread.
Monday, you mean?
Yes, sorry. Yes, during the evening when we started to see the fire come into the canyon, we were working cooperatively with some of the utility CUC to get those shut off.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, two questions. Are any of these fires under control, or are every one of them considered out of control? And if they are out of control, what's the prognostication for when you might get control? That's my first question. The second question would be, you've activated the structure task forces, and I know a number of crews are up in the Fanniam Canyon. What is their responsibility during an active fire in an evacuated area?
Chief Graff, are you able to answer those questions?
Yeah, this is Doug Graff. I'll take the first question and then defer to Mariana for the second one. The first question is relative to these large fires that we described on the landscape and that we're hearing about regularly. Their potential for containment. How well are we doing corralling these fires? And we are having limited success, very limited success. These fires continue to spread given the weather conditions. So most of these we would put at 0% containment. And as we build confidence that we're starting to get our arms around these fires, we'll increase that percent containment. But everything we're describing today relative to the large fires on the landscape, we're at 0% containment. And that's not going to change until we start seeing a break in the weather tomorrow, midday as I described, where we can start to reestablish containment lines on these fires and start to push back. Right now, it's been a 100% life safety and point protection strategy. And my highest hope is midday tomorrow, we can start to see that turn around. What I would like to highlight, however, there's hundreds of other fires that we don't hear about. And one, for example, out of Umatilla, 9,000 acres, and we have that 90% contained with dozer lines around it. And that's a fire that just started a few days ago. So there's a lot of fires that we're having success on. Those are the ones that typically don't hear about. Success rate is in the range of 96% statewide of keeping fires at 10 acres or less. And I turn to Mariana for the second part of that question.
Thank you. In regards to structural protection and our structural crews, our primary objective on each and every one of these fires that we're on is evacuations, answering 911 calls, and continuing to look for individuals who need assistance. That is our number one priority on each of these fires, is reaching the individuals who need help. As we move into these fires, or into the days on these fires, we will be transitioning to getting into the areas that we have not had access to. So crews on the Fanniam fire are continuing to look for ability to access areas that we have not been into and continuing to look for individuals. Again, primary is evacuations and looking for individuals that need assistance.
And Sarah Klein from the AG had a written question. Governor, yesterday you called the fires unprecedented and once in a generation. This is happening on top of the pandemic. Can you talk about these two events colliding? How has it impacted hospital resources and issues that are facing people already? Also, residents have spent months battling the pandemic and struggling financially and mentally. What would you say to Oregonians as they face another tragedy again from that one?
So again, my heart goes out to Oregonians impacted by this devastating wildfires that we are seeing across the state. It is really challenging. I know that hundreds, thousands of Oregonians have had to evacuate and are very concerned about losing their homes. My heart goes out to all of you. I know this has also been a challenging number of months for a number of us as well due to the global pandemic. I had conversations with our federal delegation yesterday and today, made it very clear that they need to continue to go to bat for Oregonians and make sure that we have the financial resources that we need to rebuild and recover from these fires and the pandemic. That this is made for a multiply challenging situation, and that we are going to do everything we can to make sure that communities on the ground have the resources and the tools and the support they need to recover and rebuild. I know that Oregonians are tough and strong and resilient and creative, and we're going to have to put all of these qualities to work in the future to assist with the recovery efforts. So I really appreciate the efforts of our heroic firefighters, our National Guard, our Red Cross assisting with efforts, our emergency management personnel. I know this is an extremely challenging and rapidly evolving situation. I'm incredibly grateful for your service. Again, my heart goes out to all the families impacted by these wildfires. I'm absolutely committed to getting you the tools and the resources you need to rebuild and recover. In the meantime, we're working with our Red Cross and other organizations to make sure that you have shelter and food and water to be safe. In addition, I'll just add that the COVID has certainly posed challenges for firefighting. Really proud of the work that our fire teams have set up to provide COVID modules on each and every fire team. So far, despite several weeks of firefighting and over 20,000 firefighters, we have not yet seen any impacts from COVID due to our efforts to ensure the safety of our firefighting crews, which I think is significant. But the other challenge, it comes in obviously shelter space. And I know that there were families in Salem at the state fairgrounds, in COTS. We're working hard to provide you with non-congregate care, i.e. Individual family shelter, so that you can stay safe and also stay COVID-free during these unprecedented and challenging times.
We have time for just a couple more questions. Next, we have Ted from the Board of
Hi, thank you. Doug, can you add some detail to the deployment of resources in terms of how many firefighting crews or individuals are on the ground, how many aircraft have been deployed, and I'm wondering, is there a deep strain on the resources that you do have, given, the conditions in surrounding states, as well as, COVID in general, does the department have the money to pay for this at the moment, and how does it access those resources?
Ted, this is Governor Brown. I will just say we will make sure that the department has the resources they need to fight this in every step of the way. We made a request for EMAC, which is the Emergency Assistance Compact, that allows other states to come in and help states like Oregon. As you're well aware, we are seeing massive fires in not only Oregon, but in California and Washington, so resources are spread thin. we're hoping to have crews from other states, including Utah, come to Oregon to assist us. Doug, do you want to add some further details?
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for the question. We've been hovering in and around about 3,000 firefighters on the ground for the last several weeks since we saw fire activity pick up mid-August from that lightning storm. Based on this event, I suspect you'll see more come into this firefight as the governor detailed. Beyond those details, we're adding a number of different incident management teams to Oregon. We have a team that was moved up from California that's going to handle the fires out of Medford. Unfortunately, the Slater fire from California burned up into Oregon, as Mariana highlighted, Cave Junction, Itch Cave Junction. So that's 2 incident management teams that'll be working in Oregon that were not here yesterday. We're also adding an incident management team east of Portland in the Clackamas area. Each one of these teams roll with about 100 folks on that incident management team that really guide all the firefighting resources on these incidents. So following those teams, we'll continue to see resources come from around the nation to support this effort. The large majority of the boots on the ground are crews, 20-person firefighter crews, and we're very fortunate in the state of Oregon to house just over 200 crews, contract crews, and we're the only state in the nation that administers a contract with those crews, so we're fortunate to have those. The other resources tend to be mid-level overhead division supervisors, task force leaders, all part of those incident management teams that manage these efforts. So bottom line, about 3,000 people. I would expect that to scale up over the next 72 hours as we shift and move towards getting on the offensive on these fires rather than only being able to provide the life safety point protection efforts.
But those resources are available to call in, though, because we have faced conditions before where that has not been the case.
Thank you for that follow-up. The national system is absolutely strained. So we have to work with what we have. And Oregon, even among all the challenges that the nation is facing, is certainly high up there relative to the priorities. And at this level of resource drawdown and fire risk across the West, from northern Rockies, Washington, down to California, there is absolutely strain in the system. It'll be slower than any one of us will like relative to bringing in resources because we are running out of crews, running out of all assets to put on across all these fires. So we'll have to be strategic about prioritizing where we put those limited resources. And that's why we tap into other access points like the National Guard. And then the military proper has been also deployed northern Rockies and California, and that helps take pressure out of the system for resources.
Great, thank you, Ted. And the last question is Dick. Dick, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. I drove very carefully up back road to around Lyons and Gates this morning, and just to survey the damage. And so my first question is, there was sort of a patchwork of losses. One house lost, but the house next to it seemingly fine. Is that, and that's pretty common, but is that what we're seeing, or are there whole communities and neighborhoods that are wiped out? And then my second question is, driving back to Salem on westbound Highway 22, which was open, I saw a lot of cars going around the roadblocks and traveling east on closed Highway 22. And I just wondered what enforcement, if any, was being done on actually dealing with folks who were traveling the closed highway. Thank you.
Dick, this is Governor Brown. I will just tell you that we know that there have been a number of communities substantially impacted by these fires. Blue River and Vida in the Lane County area. We know that Phoenix and Talent in Southern Oregon, there have been a number of small communities that have been severely devastated by these fires. But I also know, and I'll let the experts speak, I also know in touring the Mosier Creek fire this past year that happened, frankly, just a few weeks ago, that fire can be very fickle. And I saw a property where there were 4 generations of a family living there. The entire property was literally wiped through the fire, and then literally right over the fence, the neighbor's property was untouched. So Mariana, do you want to respond to that and provide more detail, please?
Yes, Governor, and those words are exactly right. In regards to the fire here in the canyon, fire moves in many different ways based on the type of fire we're seeing and the wind. So it's very often you'll run into a community where you're seeing patchwork of loss, and in some cases, complete loss. And I think you'll see that a patchwork of loss and non-loss on all of these fires. But to the governor's point, Oregonians are going to be experiencing significant loss, not only in life, but in property. And those are things that we're continuing to work through as we engage back into those communities.
Mariana, can you speak to enforcement? We're obviously concerned about people driving up to look at fire sites.
Yes, good question. Sorry for the follow-up. On these fires, we are working in coordination with not only law enforcement, but ODOT. In addition, looking to the National Guard for future requests to assist in those areas. On this fire specifically, the fanniam fire, there are many individuals who have not only emergency vehicles, but other type of vehicles. So not knowing specifically, it could very well have been a responder or a team member. It is being coordinated through the Oregon Department of Transportation on this fire. And as the fire progresses or changes, we are putting those checkpoints in place.
Thank you. I think that concludes our conference today. Again, I want to say to our first responders, to our firefighters, to our National Guardsmen and women, to our emergency personnel, our law enforcement, and our Red Cross, thank you for your service. We are incredibly grateful for your dedication and determination to saving lives and saving property throughout Oregon. To the Oregonians that have been impacted by these devastating fires, my heart goes out to you. We will work with everything we have to make sure that you have the resources and tools that you need to recover. Please stay safe out there. Please be careful. And if you are in a community where an evacuation order is issued, please respond. You may not get a second chance.